Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us here tonight. Before we start, I want to make a quick announcement about translation. We are having tonight's conversation in English, but if you'd like English to Spanish translation, you can click on the link below the video. It's a Zoom link. All you need to do is silence your YouTube video and follow the Zoom link, and you will receive live translation, English to Spanish there. Antes de comenzar, quiero hacer un anuncio sobre la traducción esta noche. Tenemos traducción simultánea al español vía Zoom. So, simplemente lo que tienen que hacer es silenciar el video aquí que estamos viendo, de YouTube, y seguir el link o el enlace que está debajo del video. Es Zoom, y allí van a escuchar y recibir la traducción en vivo. So I will take a few seconds just to let people figure out the translation piece. A ver, les damos unos segunditos para que puedan acceder a la traducción y comenzaremos. All right. How's everyone doing? I'm Miguel Jiménez with the Lit Luz Festival, the Lit Luz Festival Book Club as well. Thank you for being with us here tonight. The Lit Luz Festival is an annual festival that takes place in Chicago and Mexico City. It's a festival that celebrates literature, language, and arts, with one of the goals being of creating intercultural exchange, intercultural dialogue between artists in both countries and audiences in both countries. And the Lit Luz Book Club is a club that allows us to introduce people from Mexico, people in the US, to writers and artists from both countries. So tonight we're here to discuss Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor, Temporada de Huracanes, a book translated by Sophie Hughes with new directions. And part of the book club is that we read the books, we discuss them, but then we also get to chat and hear from the authors. So that's what we're going to do today. We have as a special guest Catherine Lacey to kick off the conversation with Fernanda. So what I'll do right now is I'll introduce the authors, and then I'll pass it over at that point to Catherine and Fernanda. So let me introduce to you Fernanda first. Born in Veracruz, Fernanda Melchor is the author of Falsa Liebre, Temporada de Huracanes, Hurricane Season, and Aquí no es Miami, which is forthcoming in English as This Is Not Miami, also from New Directions. She was a participant in the Lit Luz Festival in 2018. Nacida en Veracruz, México, Fernanda Melchor es la autora de Falsa Liebre, Temporada de Huracanes y Aquí no es Miami. Fernanda participó en el festival Lit Luz en el 2018. Catherine Lacey is the author of 4 books of fiction, Nobody Is Ever Missing, The Answers, Certain American States, and new novel Pew. She lives in Chicago. Catherine Lacey es la autora de 4 libros de ficción, Nobody Is Ever Missing, The Answers, Certain American States, y la nueva novela Pew. Catherine vive en Chicago. So without further ado, please welcome into your homes Fernanda Melchor, Catherine Lacey. We're going to pass it over to them. Following their conversation, we'll have a Q&A with Fernanda. So we'll pass it over to Fernanda Melchor and Catherine Lacey.
Hi, thanks for having me sit here in my house and talk to a computer. I was really excited to be asked to talk to Fernanda about Hurricane Season. It's a completely remarkable and unparalleled book, as I'm sure a lot of people that are watching already know. If anyone that's watching hasn't read it yet, you immediately need to go read it. And I was wondering just first, Fernanda, if you had any kind of vision or intention that for how you wanted the reader to be changed by reading the book, and or if you could tell us a little bit about the way that you changed as a person while you were writing the book.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. This is really exciting. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Sarah, who's in backstage somewhere. It's such a pleasure to be in this club, in this book club. Lit Luz is a great festival that has worked since so many years, uniting artists from Mexico and the States. And for me, it's an honor to be invited and to be here with you talking about literature. And thank you for choosing my book. I know it's not sometimes an easy to read book or like the easiest pick. I know too that sometimes it could not be like the book for everybody. But I really appreciate you guys went through it, and of course, for me, it's always super important to think about the reader. Because for me, reading has always been an experience, not just like following words in a piece of paper and making this mental image. But for me, literature has to be like an intense experience that's very, very much like life itself. And I don't know, that I think that comes from when I was a child, and most of the world I knew by reading books, by reading novels. And that allowed me to get to know other places. And I was a child that spent lots of time at home because both my parents work. So me and my brother had to spend lots of time at home, and we used to read. We used to watch TV a lot. That's also a strong presence. I think the way I write has to do a lot with cinema and TV. And basically, I just want always to make books that are also experiences. And that kind of changed during the writing of the book, because at first I just wanted to tell a story. And afterwards, when I found the story I wanted to tell with this book, with this particular book, I started thinking about the effect, that emotionally effect that this book could have in a reader. And I could say that this book changed me a lot as a person, and that's something that usually happens. And it could sound like something really romantic, right? To think that literature can change us in such a strong way. But I think actually when I finished hurricane season, I had to go to therapy, because this book moved me a lot of feelings, awkward feelings and emotions that I was not ready to be feeling, like stuff that had to do with my family, with my own childhood, stuff that had to do with being a mother. At that time, I was raising my stepdaughter, Hannah, and being a mother, for example, mothering was something that just liberate a lot of demons I had inside myself. And this book was like the materialization, this book made all these emotions like something really concrete, like really outside myself. And yes, I think every book should aim to do that. I know it's romantic to think that way, but I think, what else can we do when we write books but to be romantic in that kind of way?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think most people change whether they know it or not all the time, continually. And I think writers are in a position to notice those changes and process them into a book. So it makes sense to me that you would have been mothering through this. It actually leads another question that I had, of many questions that I have. There's an enormous amount of violence in the book. It's an extremely intense book, and most of that violence is perpetuated not just against women, but against just the feminine in general. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your decision to create this space for the reader, particularly to depict this culture of violence, this kind of culture of death that is explicit but without being gratuitous. And I think that is what the book does. I've certainly read many books that are gratuitously violent. We've seen movies that are gratuitously violent, and then we've seen the other ones that are explicit in their depiction of a violent place without making an object of the violence in itself. And I just wonder, because the book is so extreme in that way, it totally makes sense to me you would need to go to therapy afterwards. But because the book is such an extreme place, both syntactically and in content, I always think books that are that extreme are generally pointing to the opposite of what they're being extreme about. And I wonder if you could also speak about the opposite space, the opposite of this violent culture.
Yeah, it's actually, well, those are like 3 questions in one, actually. And well, I think, I don't know, I've been trying to understand my own need to write about violence, at least in this book. But if you guys have read more books, more other of my books, you will see and you will understand that it's always a recurring theme for me, violence. But it's not like I artificially find these themes and make them into literature. But I think the violence is always inserted in the narrative, not only in the story but also in the language. For me, it's very important that that writing is a whole experience, not only telling a story but also making feel things through the writing, to the language. And that's poetic, right? That's a form of poetics. And well, for me, it's, I don't know. I've been trying to understand it. At the same time, I never got to the center of the issue. I think for me, it's an obsession, violence, because from an early age, I witnessed. I was born into a machist culture. I was born into a culture that thought of women as second-class citizens. I was born into a family that I always felt like being born a woman was like a disadvantage, like even a handicap, That's what I felt for me growing up a girl. And interesting in literature, I will always see that writers were always, all men, all white men. There weren't like any figures to look up to. So for me, just, I don't know. I took a long time to make amends with the fact that I was born a woman and that my way of being a woman is perfectly feminine and natural. But it took me a long time, and I think the experience of mothering, of being a mother, helped me, because seeing my stepdaughter growing up, I just wanted that she will feel like me when I was growing up, like I will do anything to avoid her feeling like I did. So I think that's what's behind the violence. But I also grew up in a culture that's incredibly homophobic. Even though people from Veracruz and from the tropic always present themselves like, like liberal people, like party people, like always, very sexually liberated. But at the same time, the culture in Veracruz is deeply misogynist and deeply homophobic and deeply conservative in the way that it doesn't allow many liberties for women. So I don't know. For me, it's natural to ask reality itself and turn to fiction to try to get to an answer. To try to get to an answer about these things. And Mexico The last few years we have a rough time with violence, also with institutional violence, from the army, from the police, but also this the narco violence and the violence and the war between organized crime groups. So it's everywhere, and for me it's just trying to understand where are we, how we get to this place, but also is just what you said. It's also thinking about the opposite. To talk about violence for me is to talk about love, and mostly the lack of love. No, I think that's what hurricane season is about. That it's about what does lack of love provokes or creates in the psyche of people, in a community, in a really close space like La Matosa, like the town of La Matosa.
That I was really struck in your interview with David Naiman that you that when you started talking about love, and it almost answered this question that I just had, but I think it's actually related to another question, which is, so the witch that's at the center of hurricane season, she is a source of many things for the community, and demonized for those things. But one of the things that she does is provides medical help, medical assistance for the women, and through these potions and through being able to administer an abortion. And there's something about a witch, a woman who's called a witch, being the source of medical help that feels so contemporary to me. Of course, it also feels very ancient and a part of a tradition, but it just seems that right now, certainly in the States, and I gather in Mexico as well, that given the chaotic state of our medical system, people and more often women are reaching into like the strangest places to get medical guidance and healing. And that feels related to just the way that the female body is still something that's completely misunderstood and acted out against, in a way that it's like tied into the violence, that it's not two distinct things, that the system of healing and the system of violence, they're very much entwined, and they're flip sides of the same coin. And I guess I wonder if you could speak to what hurricane season says about healing and says about the female body.
I think that's a great question. I just don't know if I will be able to answer it properly, but I'll try. I was I don't know, growing up, I just saw this kind of healing in Veracruz around, everywhere. It's just not like traditional indigenous medicine, but also in Veracruz, people believe that spirits can heal you. It's a sort of mix between Catholicism, Santeria, a lot of influences, diverse influences, and lots of people believe that there are special people who can attract spirits, and there are good spirits that can help heal another person. And also they believe that there are evil spirits that can do the opposite, right? They can harm people. And I myself, I come from a family of practicant Catholics mostly, and we are not from Veracruz. My father's family is from Baja California, from the north of Mexico, and my mother's family is from Ciudad de Mexico, the capital, and they are like from German immigration descendants. And I'm not really familiarized with Veracruzanian culture, with this kind of healing, but I could watch it all around me when I was growing up, and for me it was fascinating, the power of the faith, and also the desperate ways that when living in a country that has failed you in all kind of matters. Like, for example, the health system, it makes you turn to other resources like these ones. And but it also has a value. It's not just only for desperation that people goes to a witch, or goes to a sage woman, or goes to a neighbor who knows how to heal with herbs just because you are in need. But it also because it's another, it's something that brings you away from violence from the institutions. The violence you experiment at a hospital, at a nursery, like women. And I've heard all kind of stories, about this obstetric violence in hospitals. My mother even lived it. I mean, it's everywhere. And a huge problem also of Mexico is the teen pregnancy. I think we're number one in the whole world. Mexico is the number one in teen pregnancy in the whole world. And it's just such a sad phenomenon that's been crossed by morals and by religion. And it's such a difficult task to make people understand that the life of women is first. I'm sorry. I know every life counts, but life of women must be first. Life of children, of young girls as young as Norma. And for me, writing Norma had to do with that, to presenting the reader with the shock I myself felt when I was 12 years old and I found out there were girls my age who got pregnant and who didn't have another choice but to have that child, and practically ruin their lives. And for me, I had like a doubt, of talking about women. In my first book, Falsa Liebre, it was about the life of 4 boys, and I didn't had the experience or the strength to write about women. And I told myself that in my next book, I will create, strong, important women characters, and that's what I do with hurricane season.
You certainly did. I wish I could get into the particulars of every single little thing. I'm so glad that the book is being translated into so many languages, because it does feel so mythic and also so contemporary. And I think actually we have to hand it back over to Miguel to start with questions from other people. But I was very honored to talk to you, and I appreciate it very much. And good luck.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for being with us here today. Catherine Lacey's new novel just came out. It's Pew, P-E-W, Pew. So please check it out. I think it's marvelous. It's beautifully written. Check it out at one of your local bookstores. I know in Chicago, we have a few bookstores that have signed copies. So get your hands on one of those, I urge you. So yeah, this is a good time for Q&A. Fernanda, we have a few questions coming in through YouTube's chat box. So I'll just remind people, if you have any questions that you want us to relay to Fernanda, please do submit them in the chat box. But we already have a few here. Fernanda, there's a question that I have here about translation. The question says, for me, one key strength of hurricane season is how at the sentence level, it builds this incredible sustained intensity that makes the book feel epic. Yet the English translation clocks in at 210 pages. From a technical perspective, how did you accomplish that?
Oh, well, it was really a tour de force for me. It was something that I really put myself into it. As I was telling you, I really want my books to be like experiences, and I needed this book to have like this apparent sound of normal speaking, like oral language. Mm-hmm. But it's fake, in fact, because it's everything is crafted. So for me, that meant a lot of work, listening all the time, reading out loud to hear myself and how the words were put into each place. For me, it was very, very important to do that. And also, it was something that what I love of novels, it's the tension that they create over essays or over poetry or over short stories. I think what I love about novels is the feeling you page over page, you always are thinking what's going to happen next. No, that emotion, I love that kind of emotion that sometimes we get with TV series now, this suspense and this emotion, and I'm always trying to create that in my novels to be that like the commercial page turners that are always filled with surprises and twists. I want my books, even if they are literary, I want them always to have that kind of tension. And basically, you have to work with language very carefully to create that.
So yeah, there's another question here coming in about the translation process. So how did you work with Sophie Hughes to make this happen in translation?
Well, I think we had like a really nice click. We will click really great, and she's just wonderful. She's so dedicated, and so she was making even questions that you will think they are silly because she understood, but she wanted to make sure that she understood the exact meaning of that particular word. And well, I'm a translator myself from English to Spanish, but I have never done anything like this. No, I wouldn't translate myself, for example, or translate a book like this. The hardest book I ever translate, I think it's Ordinary Seamen, Francisco Goldman, that has like really intense and difficult prose, but this is, Goldman's, he's not as, how can we say, like ordinary, like my book, doesn't have so many bad words. And we will work really closely and exchange like YouTube videos about the songs that appear in the book, and basically there's sometimes you just have to. I really trust a lot in my translators. I'm not that kind of a writer who wants to be there and be so picky about the words they choose. I wanted Sophie to have liberty, to freedom, to translate as she will think, and I think that worked out pretty good, because sometimes I don't think the author is like the person who should be proofing the translation. I just think sometimes you are too close to the text to be able to distance and to propose notes or solutions. And not pose only problems for the translator, right? So I'm always trying to respect the translators. And it gets to a point. With English, it's easy because I can read it, and I love it because I think Sophie translation not only reflects the literacity of the story, but also like this strange poetry I wanted to create with bad words and profanity, I wanted to do that, and I think Sophie did it great. But there are not so many languages that I speak. I only speak English and a little bit of French, and that's it. And with the German language, for example, I just had to do like we Mexican do, and just, and que sea lo que sea, ¿no? Que sea lo que se pueda. Be it whatever it is. I don't know. But it has to be an act of faith to trust in your translator and to trust that they are doing like the best they can. And I don't really think that they are untranslatable works of art. I think everything can be translated. Of course, it's not going to be the same, but I think even translation can do wonderful things. I'm thinking, for example, The Simpsons, the TV show, the cartoon show. in Mexico we have like this translation that is wonderful, and I myself I don't really like listening to The Simpsons in English because it is not as funny and as good as in English. So I think it's pretty much everything is translatable.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. There's some people that say that The Simpsons in Spanish is funnier than The Simpsons in English. So I've heard that before. While we're talking about that, there's a question that came in about that the translation and readers in other countries. And off camera, we were just talking about you just did an event in the Ukraine. Have you been able to hear how people have responded to this novel in Germany or in the Ukraine?
Well, in Germany last year, I won two literary prizes, the Anna Seegers Prize and the House of the Cultures of the World Prize. So I guess that I know prizes are not like a standard for don't mean anything, at the end. But at the same time, it means that there are a group of people, the jurors, who thought that the work was worth having a prize, So I try to stay away from critics, not because I'm not so, how do you say, I'm not so proud just to think that I don't have errors or I do mistakes or I cannot be a better writer, but it doesn't help me to write more. It just makes it every time more difficult for me to write every time I hear what people think about my work. And of course, I love to listen when people is excited about hurricane season and just, like it blew my head. And I love hearing that, of course, no? But at the same time, to go into Goodreads and take a dive in that. I confess that the English translation was published, beginning this year in the States, in England also, and in the UK. And just until I think 2 weeks ago, I didn't have the courage to go into Goodreads reviews, and I just did it like really quick. And I said like, oh, I still have 4 stars, more than 4 stars, okay. But it is really not useful, It made me so nervous. And for me, everything that's been happening with hurricane season is a miracle, Who would have thought that a book as local, as crude, as awkward as hurricane season will be so read by so many people from all the world. So I'm just so thankful for everything that's happening.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think some in our book club that we've been discussing the book, and some of the readers were really impressed and fascinated and had the question, and I see one coming in right now, a question about the way that the novel works through different point of views, and a lot of people felt like it does something really great where it kind of starts from the beginning, it circles in, and it kind of narrows down towards the end. So there's a question that came in here. Did you envision the story like this from the beginning, or did it start shaping as it progressed?
No, it starts shaping. At first, I wanted to write like a road novel. This was going to be the story of 3 guys that got into a van and just drive through this secondary road house. Like these roads. Rural roads between small towns, and at the end they were going to kill the witch, but this was going to be the small talk and meaningless I don't know, like adventures of 3 people who are about to commit a murder. That was the first idea I had, but it just, I don't know, it started to grow up in me. And this project of having lots of strong women characters just helped me a lot to begin listening to the story through the voices of women. I wanted the story to have the voices of women all over. For me, it was very important, and that helped to shape the book a lot, because I wanted to have lots of voices, but at the same time, I didn't want the book to be like a collection of first person testimonies. I didn't want the book to be like, for example, While I Lay Dying of Faulkner. That's each chapter is dedicated to a person, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to integrate, to have like this one voice that could turn into whole other voices. And I was trying to look for that kind of narrator, and I found it in Gabriel Garcia Marquez, El Otoño del Patriarca, the autumn's, the patriarch's autumn. Okay, and I found that kind of narrator. That's also the narrator of Los Albañiles de Vicente Leñero, or in some books of José Agustín. I read a lot of Mexican literature from the 60s, and where that kind of resource was used a lot. You know, that current the stream of conscience. I just sometimes I don't really remember like the technical terms in English. The stream of conscience. But I wanted to do something more radical, you know, in the way that I wanted the narrator to sometimes be like a demon who gets into the corpse of into the body of somebody and just start talking in its own language. And I wanted the language to be crude because I didn't want to be far away from the characters. I needed to be just in their skin. So for me, it was very necessary to use that kind of language, even vulgar language, like you know, profanities and all kind of misogynistic and homophobic lingo, because for me it was very important to create a word with the words that the characters will use. And I know it's extreme because it was a risk, you know, and there's people who actually hate the book for that, you know, but I just couldn't do it in any other way.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Earlier, when you were talking with Catherine, you were talking about how heavy the process of writing the book was. I'm thinking about some of the conversations we had here with the book club about how heavy it was, but there were these moments that were really magical and light, like the karaoke scene in the witch's house. And the question that came in here about that. And I'll add a little bit of my own question. And I heard that, and I think I read in an interview that you were listening to a lot of Luis Miguel for the character of Luismi. And for those that don't know, Luis Miguel is a sort of pop, one of the Mexico's and Latin America, I think, biggest pop stars, has been singing since he was a child. Was there some joy in writing the character, someone like Luismi, that has these revealing moments, like singing Luis Miguel?
Yes, of course, because the book is so crude and so awkward that it has to have like these moments that are like small islands, you know, or like small, like hurricane ice, you know, like places where the reader can take a breath, you know, because if not, it's torture. And I know there sometimes it seems like there are not enough safe places like this in the whole book, but I try to meticulously create them, no, to give air to the reader. And one of these sometimes are like tender moments, you know. Even I'm thinking of Norma when she speaks of her stepdad's abuse. There are moments even of tenderness, no? In that terrible relationship, there are moments of tenderness, and there are moments of, or in Luismi's relationship, her relationship with Luismi's, or there's also, you know, like these weird moments, like oniric, or kind of Lynchian, you know, like David Lynch's movies of everybody thinks that the witch is doing, like, you know, like satanic rites in her home, and at the end it's just a karaoke, you know, with music from the 80s in Spanish. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and the ending, for example, it's also I could end the book with Brando's stories. The book could end like that, but I felt like I owe the reader some finishing, you know, like some. It couldn't just end like that. We needed to de-escalate, you know, like going down easily, and I just came out with the grandfathers, this character, and I just read a book of chronicles from Josefina Estrada, and she talks about las morgues, like I don't know how to say that in English.
The morgue, or
like where bodies end.
mm-hmm.
And she did a research about what happens to a body in Mexico when nobody reclaims it, and I just found this testimony of a person who worked there and who used to talk to the bodies to make them like tranquilizarlos, to eat them,
calm them.
to calm them. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and I thought that was the witch needed, because she had such a hard life with so many disappointments and disillusions, and and she tried to do the best she could, to live the life that she had to live, and I just wanted to give her like a realistic but full of dignity burial in that way, full of dignity, as sometimes it happens in Mexico in reality, and the dignity that so many people in Mexico are lacking, right now because of the violence and many people disappearing and being mutilated, and that's what I want to. It was for me, it was for the witch, it was also for the reader. I think it was what the book needed.
Yeah, that's great. You answered a question that there's a few questions that came in about the ending, and I just want to read one because I love it. It says, "Girl, that ending. What are the readers supposed to make of that ending?" Because I think there was a lot of readers that, at least, that were wondering about that. It's such a minor character, the grandfather, but I think it answers that question. It sounds like you wanted to, you felt like you owed it to the witch and those characters, huh?
I just thought that my other book, Falsa Liebre, my other novel, and even the book of on non-fiction stories, This Is Not Miami, that book ends super, like in a super strong and difficult place, because we are talking about violence, about we are talking about blame, the blame that the citizens feel because we're not doing. What are we doing to avoid that violence, or to react against that violence, or what are we doing as a society to protect our children? So it was always such, like hard endings, and I just wanted to do something else. And a friend just told me that, he told me, like, for your next book, you have to make the moon disappear and make it appear again. So that's what the idea of having the grandfather in the book. So I was supposed to show of the light away, but at the same leave something, a small light, like a nightstand, like the moon, like the stars, something small, but like full of hope.
Yeah, and I think that's the sense that I think a lot of readers had, right? That it left everyone feeling, like you mentioned earlier, able to breathe, at the end after reading the book. There's a question that was coming in here, and I think it's related to some of the things that the book club talked about. That it felt like the novel in some way was asking readers to consider these people's lives, or these characters' lives, and it reminded me of something that I know that you mentioned before, that the idea for the novel came from a nota roja, no, which is like a genre of of journalism that sensationalizes violence and violent events, murders. Um, did you go in with that sort of idea of like humanizing the people that are behind those atrocities or murders that you see in the Nota Rojas?
Yeah, that's been kind of a program for me from a little while yet. I've always been interested in this gender, in nota roja. I did my master degrees, in fact, in art and aesthetics about nota roja. What's the experience that people has when looking at these photographs? And I dedicated my thesis to nota roja photographer that's called Enrique Metinides. He's great. He's now considered our contemporary artist. He's just beyond graphic of gory photos. He's just beyond that. He tells stories, and he has like this influence of noir cinema and gangster movies, and it's just beautiful. It's just great work. And I've always tried to make justice to this kind of narrative, because for me, the stories that appear in Nota Roja, about murder, about crime of passion, about revenge, these are like, the stuff of what human interactions are made of. This is the stuff of, Faulkner wrote about it. I think every novel of Faulkner can be translated to a Nota Roja story, and even Shakespeare's work can be translated to a Nota Roja too. So, but the thing is, Nota Roja is also full of stereotypes. La Nota Roja is racist, is misogynist also. It gives you the idea that the violence it's something that only occurs once, and it's not a systematic thing. That's what I don't like about Nota Roja, and it's always the poor people who appears in Nota Roja, not always the rich people or the people with upper level, and I think that's unfair too. So it's been years since I tried to tell those kind of stories with another kind of language, with a language that allows us to understand what's behind those terrible acts that just don't happen because of I don't know, because it was too hot and people got crazy, but it has a reason, and a systematic one. And also another thing I don't really like about Nota Roja is the way they always they never actually follow up on the thing that happened, on the event. And when you write novels and when you write histories or when you write non-fiction stories, you got the chance to with the tools of literature, you got the chance to follow that story, to go backwards and try to understand what happened, and to go to the future to see the consequences of that same violent action. And it's what I've been doing most of this time, because I really find it, for me, it's a necessity. I think in the States, it's not Nota Roja, but a really popular genre is true crime, for example. And it can be, very literary, like in Cold Blood, or it can be like, not literary at all and kind of a cheap. But there's lots of people reading that kind of, serial killers and all that kind of narratives. And most of them I found are women, because women, it's like women, we need to know what's the possibilities of evil. We need to know that evil exists and how does it take shape in our kind, It's like the function that fairy tales has for children. Fairy tales help children to understand what are the perils of the world. So it's sort of for me, it's similar.
Great. And maybe this is a good last question to end on then. You have Aquino's Miami translated. It will be forthcoming, titled This Is Not Miami. Also with new directions, right? I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what readers can expect there. I know that they're crónicas, right? So it's another sort of genre too. Can you talk a little bit about what This Is Not Miami is about and what readers can expect from that?
I was just so under the influence of Truman Capote when I thought about that book, because, for example, the book, this beautiful book, Music for Chameleons, where he talks about things that happened to him or things that he heard, and he just tells them in the greatest prose. I really love Truman Capote. He was such a genius, and I just wanted to do that, but talking about Veracruz, my hometown, and about a certain time between 2008 and 2012, I think, where violence exploded, where the war against narco traffic, against drug dealing explode, and the consequences now that we have in Veracruz are like thousands of people who just disappear. They were forced to disappear, were murdered, and that are being now found in mass graves. So it's such sort of a chronicle of that time in Veracruz. But it's so many things also. It's about being grown up in Veracruz, and I try to find the roots of that violence, because narco violence is not an invasion. It's not like the invasion of the barbarians. It's something that really had deep roots in Veracruz. So when I was a child, for example, the story that opens the book, when I was a child, my mom used to take us, me and my brother, to see an UFO that appears in a beach in Veracruz. So it was, everybody went there in Veracruz, went to see the UFO, because it was 1992, 1991, when there was a solar eclipse that was really, like something in Mexico. And also, like UFO culture was really something in Mexico, and all kids grew up watching these videos, about these spaceships and all this paraphernalia. And I remember going with my mom and my brother to see the UFO, these lights that got up from the sea and go into the river. And when I grew up, I found out that at that time there was a lot of drug trafficking with airplanes that came from Central America. And in fact, there was a huge scandal at that time, because there was an operation of the federals who were chasing drug dealers, and they end up being killed by the army. So I try to, the book is filled with stories like that, like try to intersect memories, and also like journalism, like research, actual research, and like the scenery of the port of Veracruz. That's for me, it's a very important place, and in Mexico history is such an important place also, because that's basically where Mexico started, in the port of Veracruz. And that's basically where everything good and everything bad came into Mexico through the port of Veracruz. So I try to make sense of violence through that book with my memories and my research of what actually happened in lots of those cases.
Nice. And do you know when that book is coming out in the US?
I have the slightest idea. I don't have. I don't really know. Probably they have told me already, and no. You see, with coronavirus, it's kind of everything's been like the schedule of books is a little bit messed. But I hope. I think next year. But I'm not really sure. I haven't received Sophie's translation yet, so I think it's gonna take a little while still.
Okay, well, can't wait for it. Thank you so much, Fernanda, for joining us here today. We loved your.
No, thank you, and thank you, Catherine. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much to Fernanda, to Catherine. Again, their books are Hurricane Season, translated into English by Sophie Hughes. Catherine Lacey's book just came out. It's Pew. You can find them at your local bookstores. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. All of it is makelit. And if you haven't yet, visit our website. Sign up for the newsletter so you get more information. There's another book coming up. There's a few more books actually coming up in our book club. And we'll be doing this all over again with other writers, other great writers. So please sign up and keep following us on social media. Thank you all so much. Again, thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, Catherine. A few more thank yous really quick. Thanks to Ana Lucía Cornejo for translation today. Thanks so much to Gianni Barra from Q4 for producing tonight's event. And thank you to Kim Alpert and the rest of the Make Lit Loose team. Have a good night.